Where does this computer?
Hi, I'm Chris Albrecht, and I want to tell you about a webinar that Ayelet Connell, Lisa Wheeler, and myself are doing that will be presented on May 8th. And the webinar is about the glymphatic system. And that may not be something that you've heard a lot about, but it's something that I came across as I was doing research for earlier classes that we've done. As I was looking up more about infectious disorders and ways to help increase the elimination through the body and be able to more easily rid the body of toxins, it came up as a way to help out with the brain and central nervous system. So what the glymphatic system is if you think about a combination between the lymphatic system, which peripherally we know helps us to get rid of things we don't need anymore, toxins, large molecules, and thinking about the glia in the brain, the connective tissue of the brain, the astrocytes and oligodendria. So if you put these two together, what you've got is a clearance system for toxins in the brain. But it also does so much more than that. It helps regulate fluid balance. It helps regulate what comes into the brain from a nutritional lipid standpoint. And it also helps get rid of toxins and it provides immune support as well. Now, a lot of us, I think, historically have thought about getting nutrition, elimination of wastes and byproducts, and immune support as being functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. And that's true, they are, but it's much deeper than that. And I think I know for myself, I had this idea of the cerebrospinal fluid as being just kind of separated. We think about the blood-brain barrier as far as we've got just at this one interface, we have where the vasculature comes together with the cerebrospinal fluid at this blood-brain barrier. But really, this is happening all along the vasculature as it travels through the brain. It's actually bathed and surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid. But it's very specific as far as how things are transmitted back and forth across the membranes and how the fluid balance is regulated. And this all happens through this glymphatic system. So what we're going to look at in the course is, first of all, the structure and function. So why do we care? What are the things that are going on with the glymphatic system? What is it made up of? What are the components? And it's interesting because as you start to look at it, you realize that the components are things that we know how to interface with. And so if we know how, that is, we have techniques, how to interface with them, then we can begin to really directly support these structures and help our brains and our central nervous systems to better get rid of what we don't need, to better manage fluid balance, and to help decrease inflammation, edema, swelling, toxicity in the central nervous system that has ramifications for everything from aging, healing, regeneration, all of these major health topics, as well as clarity of thought and a lot of other things that we appreciate more and more as time goes by. So part of what we'll look at, besides just the structure and function, is how to prepare the system for the best results as far as treating and supporting this lymphatic system. So what that means is we're going to look more at differentiation, and we're going to have new differentiators to more specifically let different tissues know who they are and what they should be doing. So we'll look at differentiators for the liver, for women's health, for the brain, for different parts of the nerve, different parts of the bone. And again, we can use these to treat glymphatics, but we can also use them to treat the bone and to treat liver and these other structures specifically. We'll also look again at the interstitium, which is that lattice, a protein lattice filled with fluid that really is part of the whole body. And we'll look at how can we help to stabilize fluid balance through the body, and thinking about edema being such an issue, dehydration being such an issue, hypovolemia, how can we help all of that to balance out? And a way to do that is through the interstitium. So we'll have techniques for that to help stabilize flow, as well as specific interstitium techniques for brain, for the eyes, the optic tissue, And the nice thing is that as you start to balance pressures, you can also more intimately be involved with the visual system and the capillaries vasculature being so tiny, it's so responsive to pressures. So as we shift fluid pressures, we can also help to stabilize things like visual teaming, the ability of the eyes to work together. So I just want to throw these pieces in because you may look at a title like the glymphatic system and say, sounds interesting, but how relevant is it going to be to what I work with? Well, if you have a brain and if your clients have brains, I can tell you it will be extremely relevant. But as well as that, it also wonderful pieces for bone, for vision, as well as looking at, they're called the aquaporin channels, but they're the channels that regulate fluid balance and water distribution between neurons and the glial cells in the brain. Now, as we've looked at different nervous system pieces, different central nervous system and cranial pieces, we know that the connective tissue, the glial cells, are so important for neuron function, but really without the glia, the neurons can't produce and release and reuptake the neurotransmitters. So they aren't able to talk to each other without these glial cells. But all of that happens again with pressure regulation that is regulated by these channels. And we'll look at how to interface with those. Also, we're going to look at, as we continue to dive a little deeper into the infectious disorders piece, because infectious disorders equals inflammation, equals swelling and edema and pressure changes. So that is intimately coming together with viral pieces and with body function in general. So looking at staph, we talked a little bit about how to work with staph infections in different parts of the body and imbalances in staph. We know that we have staph throughout our bodies and on surfaces, and it's a question of balance. So we're going to look at some other specific structures where we can help balance this, like the nose, for instance, the sinuses, brain, some of these areas where it can really wreak havoc long-term, and you may not even know it. Along with that, we'll look at pathogens on the coronal and sagittal planes and not just transverse planes. One of the real pieces about this, though, that I'm very excited about is looking at neural regeneration and the ability to differentiate stem cells in the brain and also neurogenesis. So we know now that we can make new nerves in the brain well into adulthood. And that's something that I know when I was in school, we were told just didn't happen. But we can absolutely do that. And we can help support that process. Something we know about the glymphatic system is that it functions mainly during sleep, especially deep sleep. And how many people have issues with sleep? So we're also going to look at some of the factors that get in the way of sleep and as a way to facilitate function of the glymphatic system. So some of the things we're going to look at are hormonal balances. We're going to have ways to work with hormones, specifically with cortisol. We'll have techniques for the pituitary as an overall overarching balancing kind of piece. We're going to look at circadian rhythms, and all as a way to help improve the quality of sleep. And as that sleep quality improves, then hopefully also our glymphatic function will improve and we'll have better drainage, better clearing, better health of our central nervous system. One exciting piece too about this, I have to say, is that in looking at these pieces, we now have several ways to directly interface with some of the major components of aging. We have ways to look at elasticity in the tissue and help improve that. We have ways to look at fluid balance and help to improve that. We have ways to look at waste removal, that is also misfolded proteins in the brain. Some of the major pieces that we think about as decreasing and slowing nerve conduction rates in the brain. And these are all things that we can work with. And in doing that, we can set up the conditions to really help us all to function and our clients to function much more efficiently and effectively for a lot longer. Um, as well as these pieces, we're also going to put in some things that are just really interesting and we want to make sure that people have. So, for instance, some templates and blueprints working with folks who've had vaccines, current viruses, to make sure that you have ways to balance the body and help the body deal with those shifts. And also some other pieces for bone support, supporting remineralization of bone, whether that scaffolding is stuck open, whereas minerals have been leached out, or whether they're stuck closed, as in self-impaction modes of the bone. So there's a lot in this class. I'm excited to share it with you. It will be, as I said, May 8th, and you can sign up for it through manual therapy seminars through our website. But I just want you to know what's going on and what we're working with and what we're excited about sharing with you. Thank you, and I hope I see you soon.